The following program is a Town of Colony television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Hello, I'm Joe Doolittle,
and I'm Kate Detting.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human spirit.
And Kate and I, are storytellers. And we're going to spend the next hour talking about the method of storytelling, the power of storytelling, the entertainment value of storytelling, and even the educational value of storytelling. That happens. Trust me, I know. I was learned by a good story. I was learned, by a good story.
And I feel that really pretty much any problem you have, except with balancing your checking account and filing your taxes, maybe not those, but most really important problems, storytelling can help solve those.
Now that comment about learned,
yeah.
There's a story about that.
I'm sure there is.
I had a friend who taught chemistry at Siena, and he was a kind of a open door kind of professor, so people came in, and he always talked about learning his students. And so one day his organic chemistry class had T-shirts made. And they had them underneath their regular shirts. And as he handed out the test, they all stood up, took off their shirts, and there in the Siena colors was, "I was learned by McDevitt."
What a tribute.
And he had his T-shirt framed in his office, and every once in a while he'd take it out of the frame and just wear it around campus because it made him feel so good. And some of those biochemists or organic chemists, they went on to become physicians and researchers and important people, but I was learned by McDevitt. So when I said that, I was really listening to my friend Gene tell the story of his T-shirt. So that, story just comes right in. Although I don't think we learn much from that one.
Well, we learned it's good to appreciate your professors, and
That's
they
true.
Remember it for a long time.
They do, and sometime down the road I'll share some of the 50th reunion stories, because that's what I've been working on for my college 50th, and you do remember a lot of things that you've forgotten or you just didn't think were as important as when they first happened. So. Such a story, and well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm bursting around spring. You'll be seeing this in June, and you'll be thinking summer, but we're still into that first blush of, the tulips are up, and the grass is turning green, and it's a lift.
The trees are filling out with their leaves.
Right.
There's still the spring green, the newly born spring green,
and it's just a wonderful time to be in upstate New York. It's so much nicer than being here in January. And so I've been kind of talking about interconnected things in the world I'm in, but what have you been doing, relevant to storytelling since we last sat here together?
Well, I had the great pleasure of being at the Connecticut Storytelling Festival and Conference this past weekend. They had me do a 2-hour workshop on finding, crafting, and telling historical stories.
Wow.
So, and my room was full. We had 34 people.
Good for you.
I was very pleased because this is what I specialize in, and I think it's a very important genre of storytelling, and not a lot of people do it. And so I was pleased to have so many people there who have done it and were interested in doing more.
And so some of the themes that you've developed around your work on I know your new CD about
learning about
Muslims is really there's a lot of historical perspectives there, even though some of it's pretty contemporary.
Right. Some of them are from stories are from news.
Yeah.
Relative in the last 10 years, news items.
Yeah. So when we talk about historical stories, we're really we're not limited to going back to the Greek myths, really.
No, and actually, I think Greek myths are easier to tell than create than historical stories, because you're pruning. Then you have all this information,
Right.
and you need to. Well, how far back do I need to go about his heritage?
And we never really knew Ulysses or any of that
Right,
stuff,
right,
so
right.
it's kind of.
But with these historical stories, it's like what I often find. This person, woman, man, is very interesting. But what is my intention in sharing this story? That I don't want to do an encyclopedia entry, because that is so boring, and I want to focus. And once I figure out my intention, then that helps me with my pruning. Does it support why I'm telling this story? If not, it belongs in another story.
It's interesting that you talk about pruning stories, and that you actually, if you prune a story like you would a bush,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's not quite right where it is, then you can place it in some other story.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like rooting it, if you will.
Yeah, you're right. Transplanting it, yes.
That's a wonderful metaphor. I hadn't really thought through that one. That's good.
And if you ever appear on a normal TV show, not one devoted to.
As opposed to an abnormal TV show?
Well, what I meant was
saying?
not one devoted to storytelling, but if you get to be on the new news, for instance, as their human interest piece, whatever, they do not want a 10-minute story.
That's right.
A nice little 2-minute story is probably like when we're on Ann Perillo's show.
Right.
It's connected to
She
today.
likes crisp.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So
did you tell any stories when you were down this big deal?
In that particular workshop, I got to tell 5 of my stories. I would make some point about finding or crafting or whatever, and then I would hit them with a story.
This is like your gorilla story, but more formal.
Well, yeah.
Okay, just because she does gorilla story. She hangs out in museums until somebody walks up next to a painting where she knows something about the painting, and she'll go up and say, "Isn't that an interesting? Would you mind? I know a story about this." So that was it's a little different, right? This is like they knew you were going to.
Right. Well, they were a captive audience more than anything
Okay.
else. But Sunday morning they have a tradition at the Connecticut Storytelling Festival of a swap. And they have a big circle, and that people sign up. And so I told a story from my new CD, Learning About Muslims, which involves our guest.
No, really?
Yes.
You told a story about our featured guest storyteller?
Yes. That I call it One Path to World Peace. And I start out by saying, this is a story about 3 young men, a Jew, a Hindu, and a Muslim. And that Muslim is our friend Khalafalla Osman.
Khalafalla Osman is here, and he's with us as the guest storyteller. And Khalafalla and I spent time back in late March. He was a featured presenter at the Sharing the Fire, the League of New England Storytelling program, and we drove over together. So we had time in the car, and I heard some of the stories, and I heard about Khalafalla, and it was a privilege. You now call me uncle, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. See, I got a more extended family. And Khalafalla, your family of origin is from Sudan, right?
That's right.
But you were born here in the United States.
I was born in Albany, New York.
You were born in Albany, so like you're a native Albanian.
That's right.
How about that?
And raised.
Cool. And when I first met you, I think you were 11 or 12, and you were in the Children at the Well, which is the Interfaith Story Circles program to use story to develop better interrelationships between different religions.
And also, there's subtitles, Youth Storytellers for Peace and Understanding.
Yeah, okay. I forgot that. I don't think I asked you this question. What drew you to that storytelling program at Children at the Well? How did that happen?
So, when Children at the Well actually just started, Gert Johnson was looking for students from all different religious backgrounds and cultural backgrounds, and so she has a good friend by the name of Sharifa Dean, who was our principal at our Nur Islamic school at the time, and so Gert came in when I was in 6th grade.
6th grade.
6th grade, and she came in with lovely, cultural stories where she just, the whole day was just a presentation of stories, and it was just something very different for us. Well, first of all, usually it's an Islamic school, and so we didn't have much storytelling or anything we had storytelling, just not in this, this
Right.
way. And so just really cool hearing her stories from the Ashanti tribe and stories of folk tales and all that. I was just like, whoa, this is amazing. And so I tried to get in the first year, but they had a limit. And so I couldn't make it. But the second year, I made sure to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were really determined.
Really determined.
Whoa!
Absolutely.
And Kate's story deals about a time when you guys were probably 2 or 3 years into that Children at the Well, and came to a story swap. And by that time, you were really closely connected. You were, I want to say, best friends with Ben Russell
Absolutely.
and
Rhythm.
Meta.
Meta.
Yes.
And yourself, and even your little brother was in things by that time. Omar.
And John Lydon, too.
John Lydon.
Who he doesn't figure in the story, but in the reality, he wasn't at the circle, but I didn't leave him out. But he was, I have a picture of him, you, and I think it's Rhythm, maybe. It's 2 of the 3 in the story. I think it was Rhythm. And I went, oh, if only, but oh well.
Well, and we've had some folks from Children at the Well on, but what's remarkable in the history of this group of youth storytellers is that the creative spirit that gets generated, that certainly got generated with you and your friends, produced a number of key initiatives, not the least of which was your storytelling in front of a lot of audiences. But John Lydon went on and did a film about Aladdin, and his whole experience of going from private school, the Islamic Center, to public school, and it's a remarkable story, well done, has won prizes, and John is still at that as his profession.
Yes, indeed.
So when I think back, and I was at the Children at the Well performance for the kids that are in this cohort, and it's really remarkable because they were much younger. They were about as young as you were when you started, I guess. But they're poised. They tell their story. They deal with things in just wonderful ways. And so it's a great program, and you're a good example of the outcome of that.
I'm humbled.
Oh yes. Well, you are humble, and that's one of your virtues.
Thank you.
But you're also confident, which is another one of your virtues. And I think that somehow your storytelling helped you do a little of both.
Absolutely.
Nothing like having a story crash to be humbled. And, oh, I'm sorry, I never had it happen to me. No.
No. Oh, well, we call those gigs from hell, actually. But they're usually only of interest to storytellers, so we won't bore you with those.
And, it was really pleasant to hear those kind words about the influence of Gert Johnson, and that's the influence of a teacher. Again, maybe she didn't have a T-shirt, but she was there. You have visited the Sudan, so you've been back to your roots in a way. Most of us only know that Sudan is that country in Africa that's south of Egypt.
Yeah.
We don't know much about it. And sometimes that influence, and I remember the story that you told me of not being with your grandfather, but that your grandfather had a coffee shop, a place of gathering in a city that I still can't say the name of. But it's where the White Nile and the Blue Nile come together. And you've been there, and in the car you kind of described the way those two rivers flow together, and one is clear and one is not, and they stay that way for a while as they go north, and then they merge into something. And that was just a beautiful picture of a place. So tell us something more.
A lot of people think, when they hear about Sudan, the first thing we know about, of course, is the unfortunate genocide that's going on in Darfur.
Right.
And also, some people know about the civil war that took place and ended in 2005. However, Sudan is a very, very rich in history region. It's the home of Kush. It's the home of Nubia and other great kingdoms in Africa. It's predominantly Muslim. And something we don't know about is that Sudan actually has more pyramids than Egypt does.
Wow.
And that's something a lot of people don't know, but it's a fact. And actually, a lot of anthropologists now are putting a lot of money into preserving these historical relics that are up north in Sudan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never knew that. Never knew that.
Yeah.
And do you still have family in the Sudan?
Most of my family's in Sudan.
Oh, really?
I wish we had some more over here in America, but you know, they're just glued to that place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we shared in the car is you're waiting to hear from law school about admissions.
Absolutely.
And one of the interesting things about you is you're fluent in Arabic.
Yes.
And one of your summer jobs was with your aunt. Just mention that one, because I thought that was an interesting. Not everybody can say this about a job.
So my aunt, she's a lawyer in Sudan, and although the law is different, I was able to translate some of her, legal documents into English for her, which was very useful. It was a really cool honor, even though I was completely unqualified. But it was definitely a humbling and transformative experience for me. As a translator, and just as a student trying to become a lawyer one day.
When we come back, Khalafalla has just kind of finished up another project that I'd like to have our audience hear more about, but I think we ought to have him tell us a story.
Yes, please.
I think that's what's in order.
Okay. So since we've been talking about Sudan, I thought I'd share a story that's rooted in Sudan. But to start it, I'll give you guys a setting of a time when I was a young, very rebellious teen. Something a lot of people don't know about, which I like to
This isn't on your law school applications, right?
It is not.
Okay.
And also, rebellious in my terms is very different. But there was a time in high school where I didn't do too well on one of my report cards, and so I hid it, and I told my parents that I did great when I didn't. However, as we believe in Islam, the truth will always prevail. And so my father found out about my grade, and I was still aloof about the situation. And it was sunset prayer. Muslims, we pray 5 daily prayers, and sunset is the 4th prayer. And we're praying, and after prayer, I'm about to go home. I'm about to go back to my room, and my father says, "Son, sit down. I would like to share with you a story." And so I was like, "All right, whatever." And so I'm sitting down and listening. And he tells me a story about a sheikh, which is a wise man or a Muslim leader, a Muslim cleric, by the name of Farah at-Taktok. Now, Farah, he had a beautiful garden. He lived in Durman, which was a city north of Khartoum, which is the capital of Sudan. And it's where the Nile, the blue and white Nile merged together. That's where it is. And to give you guys a better visual, if you think about Schenectady and Albany's relationship, Durman and Khartoum are the same. And so this was during the time where the British were still occupying Sudan. And he had this beautiful, beautiful garden right by the river. And every sunrise, as the sun would shine over this beautiful garden, he would just, after his prayers and after his remembrance of God, he would look and just observe the beautiful creation of God. And he would smile. It was a very therapeutic experience for him every morning. And one morning, a man starts running. And he's running rag clothes, and he's running really fast and starts trampling over our dear Sheikh's beautiful plants. And now Sheikh, although he was a very calm, very, patient man, fortunately that was not the day.
That was it.
He yells at the man and he says, "Hey, young boy, what are you doing? Why are you trampling over my beautiful plants?" And so the young man in his raggedy clothes, he said, "Sheikh, listen, the British are after me, all right? The British are after me, and I didn't do it, okay? But you need to hide me because they're going to take me and they're going to do whatever they're going to do with me." And so the Sheikh, calm again, patient again, he thinks. He starts to stroke on his long beard. And he remembers, he says, "Oh, young man, go hide in that haystack right there. They won't find you." And so the young man goes into the hay, the pile of hay, and they wait for a while. And right after that, of course, the British army comes. And now they're marching. They're marching with their heavy-duty military boots. And the Sheikh understood that if he lets these men trample over his plants, it will be very, very hard for him to fix the garden. And so he runs to the men and he looks at the general. He says, "Oh, good morning. How are you guys doing? Is there anything I can do for you?" And so the British are like, "Actually, we're looking for someone." And they pull out their wanted sign. And they said, "We're looking for this fugitive. Do you know where he is?" And so the Sheikh starts to stroke on his beard and he says, "Yes, actually, I hit him in that pile of hay quite a little while ago." And so the general starts to signal his men quietly, and few soldiers start to approach the hay. And they're approaching, they're walking, and then the general says, "Halt! Now this is a decoy. There's no way he's in that pile of hay. We have to go before this guy, gets away and we can never get him back." And so they turn around and they march like nothing happened. And as they were out of, sight, the man peeks his head and he yells at the Sheikh. He says, "Sheikh, what was that? You told me to hide and then you tell the British that I'm in the hay? What's wrong with you?" And so the Sheikh starts to laugh and he strokes on his beard and he says, "Oh, silly young boy. If the truth could not save you, what made you think a lie would?" And as I resonated with that story, I started to reflect on why my dad would possibly tell me this story. And then, oh no, my dad said, "Go to your room, son. You're in great trouble. Don't you ever, ever try to lie about a report card again." And I was grounded. But ever since that story, I'll never forget it. Even when lying is so tempting in a situation, I just have to tell the truth. And I've experienced that the truth actually has set me free from any kind of trial or trouble that I was trying to lie my way out of. So it had a very profound effect on me.
I can tell.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful having met your dad just the other night. It makes it even a better story because I can see him kind of doing it.
Yeah.
Neat.
Thank you.
And so you can learn from stories. There
yes.
you go.
And they stick with you.
Yeah.
The story of the half a blanket. A young man gets married. He and his father had been living together. The mother had died a while ago, and the new wife comes in. She's very happy with her father-in-law, but he's getting elderly, and finally, his sloppy eating habits and everything else annoy the young man, and he says, "We're going to have to ship you off to the old folks' home, and oh, wife, get him a blanket. We can at least give him that." And the little boy goes, "Mama, cut the blanket in half, because when I ship father off, when he gets old, I'll need something to give to him when we ship him off." And the young man goes, Well, forget about all that. We'll just forget about it. So when my in-laws were my parents died before they got elderly, but when my in-laws were getting elderly, and anytime they did the least little thing annoying, I remember that story, and I went, don't want to go there. They're elderly; they need to be respected. Let's make some allowances here. Let's not. So
so we do learn it, and your father was intentional with using the cultural background that he'd grown up with to encourage or educate you. And I suspect that when it comes your time to be a father, that you might do the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. So we pass down what we know to be true to our kids through stories.
Yeah, it's in the United States, Disney seems to have sort of garnered the most attention on story, and those stories had learning, teaching aspects to them, but the entertainment part has sort of overwhelmed them.
Well, that's true.
But,
that's true. There's still more family-oriented than some of the stuff that's on television and in the movies, but that's true. That's true. Khalafalla, we're going to come back to you for a little bit more learning, but right now, Kate, I think there's a lot going on, in the storytelling world, and we're just going to share with our listeners or viewers what's going on.
We'll do this. I think of this as coming attractions. On June 6th, you can go to 2 different kinds of storytelling events. In Glenville, Joe and Audrey Seidman are doing a repeat of a program, Love Stories from the LGBTQ Communities, that they did earlier this year.
Over in Guilderland, yeah.
Okay. They're doing the G's now. Now they'll be in Glenville at the Trinity Reformed Church.
Cool.
And that's a very special program.
And some folks from Glenville were in the program at the Presbyterian Church in Guilderland and invited us to repeat or to bring together another group. So it's kind of like a story swap plus some opening presentations. So we encourage people to show up who want to share an experience of being gay or having a friend that's gay or whatever. And it's a pretty neat experience, actually. So.
And then also on that same night in Albany, at the Hindu Temple Society on Albany Shaker Road, will be Stories of Peace, the monthly meeting of the Interfaith Story Circle program. And the guest teller is Bethany Ghani, I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation there, who is the founder of the Global Peaceful Cities Project. And again, it's the same sort of thing. She will make an opening presentation of 30 or 40 minutes, and then the people there can share their stories of peace. And I didn't put the website. No, the website is now on the the slide by the time you see this. The parent organization has of the Interfaith Story Circle program and Children at the Well is now called With Our Voice, and the website is withourvoice.org. So I chopped up the flyer, and the flyer has the website at the bottom.
Understand.
But it will be back. And then the first Tuesday of the month happens on the second Tuesday of the month in terms of storytelling at Arthur's, because Joe has occupied the first Tuesday of the month, as we just spoke. So on June 13th, Dan Testo will join Joe at Arthur's Market and Historic Coffee House in the historic area of Schenectady, the Stockade, for an open mic for storytelling, music, and spoken word, 7 to 9.
And Dan Testo and I talked recently. He's retired from his job as a school teacher and was eager to get back into storytelling. So there we go. So.
Yes. And then on The following night, the second Wednesday of the month, is the Saratoga Storytelling Open Mic on Wednesday, June 14th. It alternates between Cafe Lena and Woodlawn Commons, which is part of the Wesley community on the west side of Saratoga. And it's free when it's there, 7 to 9. It's behind Hospice on Clement Street. And people are welcome to join us. And that'll be, then they take a summer sabbatical.
Right.
And we'll be back in September at Cafe Lena. Shawnee evenings at the Irish American Heritage Museum. It will not happen in June.
We're taking the summer off.
And
too.
they are also taking the summer off. Yes. But I'm mentioning it just so you know it's not. Then the next Story Circle meeting will be at the Pine Hills Branch Library of the Albany Public Library on June 21st, Wednesday. We'll have a learning session at 6:15 and then sharing stories under development 7 to 9. And this is, we welcome listeners, very much so. And if you have a story that you want to tell, you want to get feedback on, or you don't want to get feedback on, whatever. The teller is in charge of how much and what kind of feedback. If you just want to hear the good stuff, that's all you'll hear.
So if you're curious about what it's like to tell a story in front of an audience, this is a good place to start. And we encourage that. So please, if you're interested at all, we'd love to see you in Pine Hills.
Yes. And I learned this from Janine Laverty when I was studying with her 10 to 20 years ago, that you may be an experienced storyteller, but every new story has its own challenges that you have to wrestle with. And so you may have a few extra techniques up your sleeve, but it's still a work in progress. And then down a little south of here in Saugerties at the Inquiring Minds Bookstore will be Storytelling with Janet Carter on the third Friday of the month, which is June 23rd. She'll be moving to New York City, I hear, so that will be stopping. So if you've always been thinking, well, I should go,
now's the time.
Yeah, hurry up and do that. And then, if you're disappointed by what's on television, who knows? You can always go to our website, storycircle@proctors.org, and click on YouTube. And there we have captured over 200 stories that you can watch on demand on your computer, or I guess even on your little bitty iPhone. Though I don't find that a very satisfying experience for storytelling. But it's better than nothing, I guess.
And if you see this show and talking with people about it, probably by the time June comes around, we will have taken this tape and posted this show to our website, and the tape will be marked with where Khalafalla starts his story. So if you want to have your own teenager hear the story from one teenager to another, you can do it on our website, right?
Indeed. It'll show up, soonish. I have a little backlog. I've been pretty busy, but kind of smooths out after this weekend.
Khalafalla, when we were talking about things in the car, and I asked you kind of what you were doing with some of the teaching you've been doing while you've been waiting for law school, you mentioned this project with your Iman, which I think is pretty indicative of kind of the talent that you have for dealing with your language ability. What happened with that? What's going on?
So basically, me and Imam Abdurrahman Yaki, he's the Imam in the Islamic Center of the Capital District. We worked together on, basically he's been a scholar for many years, like over a couple decades, and so he specializes in marriage, and so he has a lot of work in Hausa, which is his native language, where he basically, he's trying to write a book. And so I've helped him reword his rough translation of Hausa into a book that he's actually currently presenting in Ghana as we speak right now. And it's called The Introduction to Islamic Marital Counseling.
Well, really?
And it's getting a lot of, positive reception in his home country.
So your role was to now do you speak Hausa too?
I do not speak Hausa. However, something we also did was I added to some of the remarks. So for example, in terms of like more contemporary issues, since I'm younger,
And you know a lot about marriage, right?
I know nothing about marriage,
Okay.
but I've learned a lot sitting down with my beloved teacher. I've been able to contribute some of my insight on some of the contemporary issues like social media and etc., like those kind of matters. But it's been a very, very transformative experience.
I bet.
I'm in no rush anymore for marriage. I'll tell you that. I'm just messing. But
Well.
yeah.
But so you translated it
Smooth out the English.
into English,
Yes.
or from Hausa to English.
Yeah, he gave me like the rough translation, and then I basically made it sound a little more eloquent. But yeah, or at least tried to.
I was wondering if maybe you discussed it in Arabic, but you both speak English, so you
Yeah.
didn't have to go to the intermediary language.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it was one of those things that I just I thought was really kind of interesting that you could actually. Again, we talked about your confidence. You do have a confident way of going about what you do, and I think that's kind of going to mark you well down the road. We've got time for another story.
Oh,
and plenty of time. Okay. So if you have another story, we would welcome that.
Okay. So a story that's coming to mind right now is a story of one of the many companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And his name was Abu Huraira. Abu Huraira was his kunya, which is in Arabic his nickname, right? So, my father, for example, would be called Abu Khalafalla, which would be father of Khalafalla. Okay. It's an Arab tradition to name people Abu something, or for the mother something. So Abu Huraira, he was not a father. He actually, the reason he was called Abu Huraira was because he had a lot of cats. And so the Prophet Muhammad called him Abu Huraira, the father of cats. And Abu Huraira was someone that was glued to the Prophet. Like, actually, he has the most narrations of the Prophet recorded in Islamic history. Prophet Muhammad's wife might be before him, like higher, but it's pretty close, which is amazing. But Abu Huraira came from a group of people in the life of the Prophet known as Ahlul Sufa. And Ahlul Sufa means the people of the wool. What is the significance of this? It actually means wool was something known as fabric, even in our day now, as a very cheap and very rough fabric that signified poverty. See, Abu Huraira, he migrated from Mecca, his hometown, to Medina with the Prophet, leaving everything, to the point that he was practically homeless when he was in Medina. But that was his dedication to the Prophet and to studying and learning to get closer to God. And so his story is remarkable. And so when I was reading about him, I came across a story of one of the many times where he was starving. And starving in our day is more like, I haven't eaten in like a couple hours, right? This man hasn't eaten in maybe 4 days. And so he was like, you know what, today I'm gonna get some food. I have to. And so he waited outside of the mosque he had too much pride to ask straight up that he was hungry. And so he was hoping by staying outside and conversing with his companions, someone would invite him to some food. And so he waited out and in the hot sun of Saudi Arabia, and Abu Bakr, which is the Prophet's best friend, walks by. And so Abu Huraira says in his story that he asked Abu Bakr a question on the interpretation of a verse in the Quran, which is the holy book of Muslims. A question that he already knew the answer of, but he just wanted to spark some conversation. And so he asked this question, and Abu Bakr answered the question and walked away. And Abu Huraira makes sure to point out to us that he was well aware of the answer, and he just wanted to spark some conversation. And so the next friend, Omar, walks by. And Omar, he's a very strong guy, right? And he walks in, and Abu Huraira, he says, "Hey, Omar, how are you doing? Peace be upon you. I was wondering, can you, explain something that was discussed today from the Prophet? Because I was kind of confused. I was hoping you can explain it to me." And so Omar, very knowledgeable, starts to answer, very sophisticated, and gives a very sophisticated response and walks away. And so, Abu Hurairah begins to feel a little discouraged. He's like, "Oh man, like nobody's catching the hint." And so, he's starting to, grow a little despair. Like he starts to feel a little despair, and he's all sad. And all of a sudden, the noble Prophet walks by. And just the way he walks, it's like a superhero entering the scene, And so Abu Huraira smiles and he says, "Oh Prophet, how are you?" And the Prophet looks at him and he can tell there's some stress in this young body of Abu Huraira. He looks at him and he says, "Abu Huraira, stand up." And so Abu Huraira stands up and he's like, "Uh-oh, am I in trouble?" And the Prophet then says, "Let's go get some food." And Abu Huraira was like, "Yes, yes." And then after that, they walked to the Prophet's house, where his beloved wife was, and the Prophet greets her in his warm way of greeting his wife. He says, "Oh Aisha, is there any food for us today?" And something that everyone knows is Prophet Muhammad was a very humble man as well. He didn't have much as well. And so, Aisha looks to see if there's any food, and there was only a bowl of milk. And in some narrations, it's yogurt, according to the translation. And so Aisha says, "Yeah, we have some yogurt." And so the Prophet recites some prayers upon it. And then he looks at Abu Huraira and he says, "Abu Huraira, go get all of Ahlul Sufa together. We're going to have a feast today with this bowl." And Abu Huraira, his face dropped. Because the etiquette of the Arabs back in the day was that the one who invites is always the final person to enjoy this meal. And so he knew that he had to gather everybody, and then he'd be the last to enjoy. And so he goes because it's the Prophet. He has to listen out of love and respect for him. He goes to the streets of Medina and he calls all of Ahlul Sufa, all the people of the wool. And they all come, all in their raggedy wool, garments. And they're rejoicing because they're also about to get some food, right? And so the Prophet then invites everyone to the house and they begin. And so he gives the first man some, a bowl of the milk, and he starts to drink and drink and drink. Abu Huraira already thinks it's over. And he starts to drink, and then he was satisfied and he passes it down. And he drinks and he drinks and he drinks, and they pass it down. And Abu Huraira is kind of shocked. He's like, "Wait, how is it still here?" two men, he's like, I'm sure one person could have took that down. And so they're continuing to drink and drink. And until, literally 20 people later, it makes it to Abu Huraira. And Abu Huraira is so excited. And the Prophet says, drink, O Abu Huraira, O father of cats. And so he says, don't mind if I do. And he picks up the bowl of milk and he starts to drink and drink and drink. And he puts it down. He starts to feel kind of full. And the Prophet said, no, Abu Huraira, you're going to continue drinking. So he picks it up again and drinks and drinks. And then he puts it down. And the Prophet said, nope, keep drinking. And he picks it up and he drinks and drinks. And then he starts to struggle. He said, Prophet, I can't do this anymore. And the Prophet said, okay, you may stop. And I just found it so powerful of a story because the Prophet was just so emotionally intelligent. He was able to see right away that Abu Huraira was feeling some intense hunger. And he was able to alleviate his stress by feeding him. And not only that, but teaching him a lesson of etiquette. A lesson of, even when you're thinking all about yourself, it's also important to think about your community, to think about others who are struggling just like you. And so that story resonated with me greatly. And it's a story that I constantly remind myself and others, especially during sermons and during community service works, that the leader is the servant. It's not a position, it's not a fancy title, but it's all about serving and being humble, and making sure that you put everyone else first before yourself. So it's a very powerful story.
It is. It was well told, and now is that a story that comes out of the Quran itself, or does it come out of the teachings from the Quran?
It does not come out of the Quran, because the Quran is the words of God. But in Islam we have the Quran, and then we have the Sunnah, and the Sunnah is the prophetic tradition. And so in the prophetic tradition is a lot of stories that are recorded and passed down and verified and authenticated by generations. And in one of those stories is this beautiful gem that I discovered.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
There's an interesting book you might be interested in as you go on in your career. There's a guy named Robert Greenleaf, and he was a psychologist, organizational psychologist, and he wrote a book called Servant Leadership, and it became widely adapted in many not-for-profit organizations. Notably a couple of Roman Catholic healthcare systems, which is where I encountered it. But it lays out that philosophy in a real way, and it's been very successful in those organizations. Wow. So kind of reshaped the cultures toward a less hierarchical structures, and it's some interesting case studies. So that's an aside. That was not really a story.
Yeah, I worked in a place where what level of, not that I was ever a manager, but a friend of mine was, and when he first became a manager, he needed new furniture. And he was told, well, we go up to the attic, that we have a storage room up there of suitable furniture. And he picked out one, and he said, no, that's too big. That's not your size. And so he ordered a new one. He said that was the appropriate size. And he said, what? But it was too big. And even though it would have made monetary sense to use what's in the attic. Yeah. I don't think they regulated the size of the plants in your office, but the desk size, yes. Yeah, so that was not a place of more of an egalitarian servant. No.
Now, in your family, your younger brother, Omar, was in Children at the Well.
Yes, he was.
And when you described Omar in your story, you kind of described your brother because he's a big tank of a guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize that I was sitting next to him the other night, and he was the same kid that we had the burrito with. You know, holy crow, man! This young man is a junior at RPI these days. So, and then your sister, who is a freshman.
She's a freshman in high school right now.
And she's also active in Children at the Well, and was a teller at this showcase for the younger kids. And so, do you guys ever sit around and tell stories yourself, or think of stories to tell, or does that work at home?
Absolutely. You know, my sister, being 8 years younger than me, was someone that I had of course I'm going to give my parents great credit, but I think that I deserve some credit in how I raised.
How you raised your little sister?
I raised my little sister too, I would say. And, you know, I made sure to show her how to be creative, how to, you know, I got to help her explore her imagination by sharing stories and practicing my Children at the Well stories with her. And she'd be like, well, you know, I want more detail on that part. And, you know, I actually means a miracle. And honestly, she's just...
That's her name in Arabic.
Yeah, and she's just a very lovely bubble of energy, honestly. You know.
But discerning in her listening.
Absolutely.
So Khalafalla, what I think I heard was that she actually helped coach you as a storyteller.
Yeah.
They help raise each other.
They help raise each other.
But since she's probably gonna watch this later, you know, be humble, young one. Be humble.
You're a family rich in gifts.
That's right.
Of story, the gifts of storytelling.
I'll give her a little bit of a swell head. We're in the car, and I'm asking about Omar, and I find out that he's like a junior at RPI and is an IT expert and things. And I said, oh, he must be really smart. Is he smarter than you? Who's the smartest in the family? Who is
I is the smartest, but she also needs to continue that potential that she has. So, you know, you're not there yet, young one. Remember that.
Don't start coasting yet.
But I hadn't seen her in several years until I saw her just the other day. And she is all the things that he's described in terms of things. And you also kind of turned her into a feminist, too. That was really nice of you.
It was, you know, accidental, but very, it was a pleasant surprise.
Well, you just lost a few points there by saying accidental.
No.
As in, you know, I don't know how she got so powerful in the way she speaks. Because, you know, I've been doing spoken word for a long time. And, like, I didn't realize she was paying attention. And, like, all of a sudden, she's like, hey, Khalafalla, I have this brand new first spoken word poem in her entire life. And it's The Angry Feminist. That's what it's called. And it just put chills down my spine. I was like,
I agree. I agree.
Like, how did this happen?
When this beautiful young woman stood up and did that poem, I said, "Oh my!" Just like
I didn't even have any words. Yeah.
So
it was crazy.
On all of your family, I think it's fun to know you so that you can kind of see what happens down the road, because it's going to be fun and it's going to be interesting. I think it has been so far.
We have about 4 minutes left.
Oh, 4 minutes left. Well,
do you have a poem to share? I mean, you didn't.
Let's see. I have many things on my phone.
Many things on my phone. I have nothing on my phone. I am a challenged iPhone person.
I am too, a master's in computer science, but I reluctantly. I bought an iPhone so I could just carry a phone and a camera in one unit.
Right.
But it's useful when I'm out and about, and I want to find out something.
Right.
That there it is.
I don't have a poem. I can do an a cappella of a song that I wrote actually about my family.
Oh, really?
If you guys would like to hear.
Oh, yes.
All right. I called it Fam. And so this is how it goes. Don't be a fool. My pops used to put me in school. Car rides always used to hear jewels. You roll your eyes now till you're thinking this through. Don't forget, boy, I used to be you. I know your shoe size. As a youngin', I wrote a few rhymes. Civil war in my home, some of my crew died. But I always kept my trust in the Most High. And that's why you're here cruising in the NY, so praise your Lord. Soften my heart as my face hits the floor. I pray for you. May the Lord please reward. How many favors from Allah we've ignored, back from sujood and I'm feeling restored. Ready for war, I raise my pen like a sword, fighting my desires, trying to open the door of mercy. Life ends with the hearse, be who prepared, don't be scared, just be alert, be. And that's the first verse. And the second verse goes, don't be a fool. My mom used to put me in school. Living room, man, I used to hear jewels. Ya Habibi, I'm always thinking about you. You roll your eyes now till you're thinking this through. Praise the Most High. You only see war thanks to Wi-Fi. No airstrikes, no occupation here in NY. No blockades like our people out in Palestine. Walking to school with no fear or landmines, so praise your Lord. Pray for the prophet and pray for my father. There's always another person that got it harder. We ought to humble ourselves like Muhammad taught us. Peace be upon him and the Sahaba. They people of honor. The world ruled by the dollar, but we refuse and resume to serving Allah. My son Khalafalla, live by your name, my son. Don't do this for a gain or the fame, young one. And then the final one. And this was right after graduation. Don't be a fool. Now I teach you the attitude of gratitude. I graduated, I made it, traveled the avenues and struggles. I had a few and survive I had to do. But his plan is perfect, y'all. He knows what you can handle, dude. Patiently waiting cause I'm his creation. Trying to praise him in all of my conversations. Amazing how from a kid he guided me to a man. From a fool he guided me with Islam. Please understand, your journey will find ease, and on the other hand, your journey will have trial. But through it all, patience is what you need, and I promise, in this life, in the next, you will succeed. And then I did an a cappella for my grandfather, who passed away a few years ago. Don't be a fool. My grandfather used to put me to school. Not the words, man. I used to see jewels. How you used to smile, man, I truly miss you. I try and read Quran now because you used to. You were so beautiful. Mama told us how you raised her. I pray Allah grants you Jannah with the acres. I pray your grave is nice and spacious. I pray we join you when it's time to meet our Maker. I mean to that. You always prayed for my deen intact, my heart clean and good deeds be stacked. I never told you how much I needed that. In this world where they misleading cats, but you will live through us, R.I.P. and best believe in that.
Wow.
Whoa.
Whoa. And just when you started, I realized that I forgot another part of the conversation because you do this stuff in rap.
Yes, and we now have like 10 seconds to say thank you very much. That was fabulous.
Be well. Be well. Thank you, Khalafalla, and thank you for watching.
And we hope you'll join us again.
Thank you.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning